Hey, this show contains language some people don't like. If that's you, get out of here now. Run fast. Run, and examine your life choices, but run. Today on Reef Beef, we're going to talk about books. We are going to talk about bad plumbing and how bad is it really, and the difference between proof and evidence and why it matters to you. This episode of Reef Beef is sponsored by saltwateraquarium.com, Champion Lighting, and it's powered by PolypLab. This is Reef Beef. Hey, Ben, how are you?
I am quite fantastic, my friend.
I do want to point this out. This I got from PNW Aquatics. Harley, right? That's Harley?
Yeah.
Harley and Tammy. And I ordered a bunch of magnet holders, frag holders, and they put this dick in it with.
And remember, so for the listener, it is a thick acrylic cock and balls that says Reef Beef, been with Rich on the balls, and it has some very glorious like veins.
Those are corals looking like veins.
Those are corals.
And the most important thing,
the pee-pee hole.
It's got a pee hole. So thank you. I am using those currently. You can kind of see them behind me in this tank over here. But what I found out is that I think this is a great idea for keeping baby corals, but it makes it very difficult the way these are made for me to be able to visualize the corals under the microscope and keep them clean. So I'm going to talk to PNW. By the way, this wasn't free. I think they made me a nice deal, which is always nice, but I definitely paid for all this stuff. But for next spawning season, I'm going to ask them to custom make me something that I'm going to be able to visualize better. But I love, Raj from MRC always said he was going to do a dick on stuff with acrylic, and he never has.
We beat him.
He's been beat. I went to Mexico leaving baby corals and was completely terrified to leave them. But I love my wife more than I love corals, and we were going to go see her family. I did get to kiteboard, so that's nice. And I come back and the baby corals are doing well and doing badly. And they're always at this stage, it's always horrible. The attrition, right? So you see dead baby corals all over the place.
Really? And
there's some doing well. Yeah, they just, remember I said at the beginning of the spawning that like at every step, 99% attrition, right?
Wow.
So they all land and then they just, some of them don't make it.
Even ones that went and then they settled, they'll croak too.
So now once they've settled, then we get 99% attrition on the settlers.
I suppose that makes sense because that almost sounds like, not to take this too out of the realm, but like, you know, if you're landing a rover on Mars, there's like stages. There's like the takeoff, there's the trajectory, there's the getting there, that's the entering the atmosphere. And at any given one of those stages, some of that stage deployment can just shit the bed.
Exactly. That's why things that have 1 billion babies aren't all over the place, right? Yeah. They expect a lot of loss. That's why we have 1 or 2 or sometimes 8 if you're all fucked up babies, and then we spend a lot of time taking care of them. So I'm moving into the cleaning them stage, and I have to move most of them off of the magnetic things to do that. Other than that, I have plugged in and charged my battery backup solution that we talked about with Jim Graham. So that thing is sitting in the other room, all charged up, ready to go. I have an online meeting with Neptune tomorrow where they're going to check some power draw from my Aquabus cables because I have a stupid system. My system is big and complex and dumb. I thought more people would have one like that, but apparently not a lot of people have done the kind of thing, the distributed system with 1 million modules on it like I have. Some have. So they expect there to be no problems with how I'm planning to do this, which is an EB832 at each location with 1 link to run my wave pumps, right? That's basically how it's going to get done. I'm putting EB832s in the places where I need power backup. those EB832s will be plugged in to the battery, right, via long cords, or I'll run lines. And if the power goes out, everything else just turns off. The only thing powered is going to be those EB832s. So my programming actually becomes really easy. All I have to do is program whatever's plugged into the power outage EB832, because everything else will be turned off. The real question is, because of my long system, does enough power get from those EB832s to the Apex brains to keep them powered? So that's all we're checking tomorrow. So that's good.
I do want to throw in there that we are just a little teaser that we are going to be putting together a show with Jim, the whole show all about battery power backup.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be pretty good, because I want to have a little talk with Jim beforehand, because you're putting it in your home and you know a bit about it. I want to ask him the questions like I don't know a single thing about it, and I want him to start from the bottom up.
Yes, we should do that, and we'll have him on once this is all up and running, so I can detail it for people. But I'm telling you, this system is like brainless. So far, all I did was plug everything in, and it all just works.
You just order things and then plug them in,
and it all just works. And it seems kind of awesome. I have to break open the manual so I can tell it to do things like how much of the battery are you going to drain before you start to charge it? How much, are you going to use the battery at all, or is the battery just backup? And I don't know how it's programmed, but I don't want to know anything about this. I just want it to work, right? A lot like the Apex. I just want it to work. I don't care. I'm a user, right? Yeah. So, but what I can tell you, all I did was plug it in and it's ready to go right now. If I unplug it, switches over to battery right like that. So it's pretty simple. The programming on the Apex is a little more complicated. Although what I'm doing is simple, just by adding another EB832 makes it almost easier. But
in this is in lieu of a generator.
Correct. But it does the same thing as a generator, except it does it automatically without any time down. It'll switch over like that, and there won't even be a blip. You could run computers on this thing.
And without gasoline.
And no gasoline. So I've got the head, it's called the MPP, right? And this one is actually a portable one. This is made for RVs because of how much juice I'm running through it. Not that much, because it's just really for flow backup. And I'm also going to have to replace my fluval pumps at some point. But so it won't do a whole house. It won't push enough through it. But that thing was like $650. And then the battery, I got a big 200 amp hour battery, which is a lot. And it's a good one with a breaker built into it and everything. So you don't have to do anything except flip switches. And that was about $1,500. So what is that? That's, $2,500 all said and done.
But that's about like a good generator. But
but the auto transfer switch itself can cost $2,500 from what I understand.
Huh.
So here's the thing. This thing, there's nothing to start up. The power goes out.
It just
whatever is plugged into it keeps getting power from the battery. There's no so I like it a lot. And I could see making a big one for the house, buy 5 of these batteries and you've got power for a while. So anyway, we'll get more into that with Jim.
And tie that into solar.
Right. So that's easy. All I have to do is make sure I've got the right solar panels. And I think I can run 400 watts of solar panels. And literally, I just run the panels together and then plug them into the connector on this machine. And then the machine goes, oh, there's solar, I'll charge. Or you can, or, oh, it's sunny out. We're going to use this solar to run these plugs. So I'll figure all that out
now.
Yeah, I'm excited. Of course, I want a whole house, version, but that's 30, 40 grand. And that would be solar included in that.
Yeah.
So it's pretty sweet. I'm pretty excited. Fine.
Saltwater Aquarium is a good place to order from. How do you like that song?
I think that song is money, baby.
Saltwateraquarium.com is a good place to order from.
Oh, it's nice. That's why you forced that rhyme in there like that.
Yeah, I sort of took artistic license to bend the pronunciation of a word. But
Yes.
anyways, saltwateraquarium.com is like if Reef Beef etched a name onto a tree where we were like, Reef Beef loves, we love saltwateraquarium.com. If you love us, you love saltwateraquarium.com. They have, what do they not have? It's probably better to talk about what they don't have. They don't sell zebras. But anyway, saltwateraquarium.com has 3 locations across the continental United States, so they can get your package to you quickly. They have online resources. They have a mobile app that you can use to order from. They get points for when you order this. They have discounts for like military and caregivers. They collect flowers and press them, and they love people.
If you are addicted to your smartphone and all you can do is use your smartphone, all you are is thumbs and like a fin, right? Saltwateraquarium.com has you covered. Here you go. There's an app. You can buy all your crap from them. And a super fun thing is letting them know that we sent you. So use the link below. And then in the options field, when you place the order, write something insane about Reef Beef or something genuine. Something genuine would be interesting. I don't know if anybody's written anything genuine yet. But what happens with that is then the owner reads them and then texts them to us laughing, which is freaking the best thing ever. So check out saltwateraquarium.com. We liked them before the show and we like them now.
Be sure to use our URL when you do order so they know that you came to them from us.
Yeah, fine.
Fine.
So on the Discord, somebody posted a picture, and you and I have talked about this a lot when you came out here.
Yeah.
With like 50% of our time was talking about the difference in philosophies about correct plumbing versus get it done plumbing, right? And the question comes down to, you know, is get it done plumbing bad, or is good enough get it done plumbing okay to leave, or should you change it and make that plumbing quote unquote better? So in this picture, oh, well, I'll let you talk.
Well, but there's a difference from my perspective, because when you're asking me, I'm running around doing this professionally. So get it done plumbing is okay if you did it on your system.
Absolutely.
But if I run around doing it at people's houses, that's not okay.
It's not okay. And even when I do the get it done plumbing here, that I'm okay with, when somebody is taking care of the system, they squint at me, right? But then again, there's some power to it, right? So if what started this all, and we'll put the picture up here, is a picture of a pump that's got 2 barbed elbows, 2 barbed fittings coming out of it, 90-degree elbows.
90-degree, no less.
Right, which is, you know, I don't think we need to talk about the problems of 90 degrees and how much it's stealing, do we really care? But not now. But those barbed fittings then had tubing over them that went into other fittings that had barbs on them, and that pump was floating in the air on those fittings.
We should make a distinction too. It was that 100% silicone tubing and not like vinyl tubing.
We think it was.
No, I can tell by looking at it.
Okay, that's yeah. I wouldn't say 100%. I would say 95% sure that that's silicone, because it looks like that to me too. So, so we'll talk about silicone tubing as well. It seemed, I looked at it and I went, that looks fine. I mean, it looks sketch, but I was like, because I know about silicone tubing, right? And I can see how far they've put the tubing over the barbs, and I can see how tight the tubing is onto the barbs, that I went, that's not going anywhere. That's okay. You looked at it and had an aneurysm.
I said, fuck the what?
Yeah, I think you had a half aneurysm because I've injected you with my DNA
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, you
Um,
would never do this, and I would never recommend you do this. But me
I
doing
could,
this, it also means if that pump goes out, it's super easy to replace it. There's no
yeah,
plumbing. You just pop it out and put back.
I could see if a hobbyist did that and like they're waiting for the correct parts that, that's okay. But I mean, again, there could be a whole conversation of the differences between vinyl tubing and silicone tubing. There's vast differences between them.
Yeah. So
Um,
I think the upshot of the whole thing is if you do quote unquote shitty plumbing and you know what you're doing, it's okay. If somebody sees a picture of shitty plumbing and does uninformed copy of that plumbing, they're going to have problems, right? If you put, and here's where the vinyl tubing comes in. If you put vinyl tubing over a barb, you better use a goddamn clamp, right?
it's not super malleable.
Yeah, and the silicone tubing,
Grips.
you stretch it over the barbs, and then it pulls in and holds.
And
Vinyl
to
tubing,
my knowledge, even after using some of this stuff 5 years, even some of it's outside, I've never seen that silicone tubing get rigid, keep a memory of a barb. Well, not much, a little bit.
but the
But
vinyl tubing
oh
is
yeah,
going to get brittle and hard, and it will start to if it's got weight on it, it'll start to work its way off the barbs.
yeah.
So the general discussion comes to, I think people get very dogmatic about doing plumbing the right way.
I do.
And I think that's partially a mistake, because if you don't know any better, how would you know any better? So I don't think people should be, admonished for doing what we are calling shitty plumbing without judgment. But I think the discussion might need to be, do you understand the dangers of what you've done?
I get, yeah. Okay. So to be charitable, I think like me and my buddies, like, it's fun to take the piss out of something we see that looks stupid. But yeah, again, to be charitable, like I wouldn't want to try to do that because I'm trying to hurt someone's feelings. And if someone doesn't know and they're like, well, shit, this Ben guy's like propping up my picture here and making fun of it. Well, I didn't know what the fuck to do. And I don't want to be that guy.
Right. But at the same time, it's so much fun to throw shade at shitty plumbing.
It is, because it's almost like, it's almost self-serving. Like I'm good and they're bad.
Well,
I'm so good because I identified it.
How did you and I meet? Fucking making fun of you using green EHIM tubing.
Was it?
That was one of the first ways we really
piss on me. Yeah.
We really talked was about the green EHIM tubing. Which I don't actually care about, but it was sure fun to make fun of you about it.
For sure.
So I don't know what the answer is. I think just everyone should be less babyish about many things.
Hey, well, here's another thing though. If someone that knows how to plumb pretty well, it is, but it isn't. It seems like some arcane dark art on how to do it properly. It's sort of, to some people, or if you're new, it'd be like if you asked me to go sweat a copper pipe. It's like I've watched YouTube videos, but like I don't, I'm not quite sure. I know it's not super difficult, but it's not super easy either. But like with PVC plumbing, you can literally put a blindfold on me and I could plumb things.
Yeah, well, and also the important thing to know about what we're doing, what aquariums are doing with PVC plumbing 95% of the time, and I have done a survey, this is scientific peer-reviewed shit out of my ass. You could do a terrible job at the plumbing and you'll be fine. We're just not putting that much pressure in these systems.
You could have a leaky joint. Okay, there's that. But as far as like the PVC bursting, that's not going to happen in our industry.
Yeah, but I mean, and I have a certification in PVC welding, right? And okay, for what we're doing, if you're using an Abyss, it's more important. If you're using a pressure rated pump, it's definitely more important. But you know, if you don't camphor the ends, if you don't prime, and if you don't prime, you're probably going to be fine. It's
I get it. Like if you don't cut the pipe square, if you don't chamfer it, if you forget to use a primer, you could still probably jam it together and it's probably not going to leak. So I get what you're saying there.
I just use Chrissy's red hot
Yeah,
glue.
red hot blue. Yeah.
I don't give a shit. You know, when I don't give a shit, I just don't, you know, it's under the fucking house. I don't care if there's glue running down it. You know?
I just want to tell a real quick
story. I'm sorry. It's not glue. It's solvent. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's not glue.
It melts the two materials together. It's not a glue that glues them together. Sort of like model airplane glue. Or
which is
solvent.
Which is why it makes sense that you want to use the primer. The primer softens
Opens up
both
the
sides
pores.
first.
Yeah.
And then you put the solvent on, and then as the solvent evaporates, it kind of literally becomes one piece. Fine.
PolypLab, powered by PolypLab. PolypLab has been a longtime sponsor of our show as well, and we love them. What do we love about them, Richard? What rabbit are you pulling out of your hat?
I'm pulling out 3. The new version of their filters for your cameras hasn't come out yet. So I still use their old filter, but I'm waiting for that, and then I'll show that all the time. Here is Reef, which I like a lot. It's one of the foods I feed all the time. Here are the gluelets that Ben and I like very much. And then here's the Genesis block that seems to be working very well as a block for media to grow, for bacteria to grow on, for biological filtration. It's hard. It seems to be very porous. It doesn't fall apart. So
thank you, PolypLab.
Thank you, PolypLab. We'll see you soon. Thank you for powering us, PolypLab. Fine.
However, my friends, little pro advice. There is a glue, maybe it's Odie who makes it, but it's called Fusion. I know they definitely have it at Home Depot, but it is a primer, cleaner, and solvent all in one bottle. I do like to use that on 90% of what I'm doing.
Yeah. So
Fusion.
You know, and I don't have any problem with vinyl tubing if you do it right. I mean, the vinyl's got pluses and minuses. Silicone, the minus is that it can kink really easy.
Yeah.
The vinyl won't. If you're using vinyl, you better fucking clamp it, and you better clamp it right. You can't just put the vinyl on halfway onto the barb and put a clamp and go to bed and feel good. It's got to go all the way, and you got to clamp it. Spa Flex, some people love it, some people hate it, right? But if there's a problem with Spa Flex, all jacuzzis would have a problem.
Yeah.
It's a little bit harder to use, but it's fine. What else?
There's a big thing on Spa Flex. I mean, we should just have a plumbing show, but I'm saying there's a thing on Spa Flex. Like when you fit the Spa Flex into a fitting, you don't want it to be something that you're forcing it to do an angle. It needs to sort of naturally, comfortably fit in that socket.
Yeah. So you need a heat gun.
Yeah.
So you can change it. Or I think I've gone back and just put more solvent on the outside of the join.
I used to think that too. And so, you know, I'm pretty good at plumbing, but I'm not a licensed plumber. So if there's a licensed plumber out there, please do call me on my shit. But again, I used to think that, but again, it's not a glue. So extra solvent is not going to do what you think it's going to do.
It does. It can, because it moistens it solvents, it
Softens.
it softens all of that shit that it's just touched. So when it hardens back up again, it's gooed that away. It is not at all optimal, but it can work sometimes. So I guess the point is,
you're describing me.
We're it's not optimal. I don't have a pen,
but it works sometimes.
But it can't. I want to write that down. That's the title.
I'm not at all optimal, but I do work sometimes.
This is 80,000 years of experience with plumbing, right? You know, and when it loosens, like you push it in, you know, or you could take, you know, you could take a PVC shaving and shove it in the tiny air hole and
Yeah.
then solvent it again. It's way better. I think objectively better, because I tried never to use the word better, to do it right the first time, because then you have less to worry about. Right?
Oh my God, you have affected me. There was a guy that called me today that was talking about stuff that asked me something better. And I started going off on that. But it's someone that I know. And so he goes, man, you're being difficult. Because he goes, what's better? And I was like, well, what is better? Better for what? What is your intentions? What do you want to do? He goes, I'm just saying which one's better. And I was like, again, I was being difficult.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what you mean better.
I guess the way to respond to that is go, if I were doing it, I would do it like this, which is, I think, what they're really asking. Well, no, I think people are really asking about better, but I don't think there's a better. You know, is bare bottom better than a sand bed? Fuck you. That's a stupid question.
Well, I know from knowing Sanjay for a long time, Sanjay Joshi, is that like, hopefully no one does it anymore, but every time he used to speak at an engagement and then it was over and he'd come back down onto the floor, he'd get swamped by people would say, you know, Sanjay, like, what light do I get? Do I get the Ecotech or the Sky? Which one's better? And he's like, I don't fuck. What are you doing?
Yeah. Better is a stupid question.
Better? What do you mean better? I mean, for what?
So I think doing your plumbing right the first time is better, but
if you know what you're doing, but if you don't know what you're doing?
Yeah, you can't do it right. You know, you can't learn to not put glue on a joint until you have forgotten to put glue on a joint. You know what I mean? It's just really hard to be able to not screw things up unless you have some experience, which is why I always say, you know, I want to get into reefing. Dude, get a little tank for the first 6 months and just, you know, play with it and figure out what you want instead.
You know what though? Have you not noticed the last many years, the rise in popularity of the pre-made tank, the Red Sea, the Cade, the Neptunian Cube, the water box? There's no plumbing involved. It's already there.
I like that.
And I get it totally. And you like that. And I'll just do this real quick. For me, it's like when someone calls me and they have the big bucks, I'm going to do it all custom because that's the big bucks.
Of course.
But so I use those sort of prefab tanks as a backup. If someone, you know, I shoot someone my price on a 150-gallon Reef tank and like, yo, I wouldn't try to spend that sort of money. So then I can be like, okay, so let's look at this Cade. It's all done. So there's not all this labor cost for me. So I could still capture the sale, but
look,
which was smart on these things. I'm sorry, Richard. It was smart on these companies because, like I said, to some people, hard plumbing, even soft plumbing, is like an arcane dark art that they're like, I'm trying to get into reef tanks. I wasn't trying to become a licensed plumber. So I'm going to get this Cade because it's already plumbed up.
Right. For a hobbyist, a newer hobbyist,
probably the best idea.
It's great. You get a Cade and there's a problem. You call a right to Cade and they'll walk you through it because that's their freaking job. If it's all custom, it's all custom. And you've got no one to talk to except other people who have done it before. So I'm all for the pre-done stuff. If that works for you. Personally, I don't like the sumps under your tank and yada, yada, yada.
Well, they're all very specific. And if there's something you want to change, it's like because it's someone else's idea.
Right. So, but if you're a new hobbyist, I'm totally down with make it as easy as possible. And it's easier now than ever. So you can concentrate on the parts you actually care about. There is no reason for you to become a plumber. There is no reason for you to become a programmer. There is no reason for you to become a lighting expert. Just get stuff that works. Anything that people are talking about more than once, if you're browsing, any of those products are going to be fine.
If you're a brand new hobbyist, you probably need someone else's idea. You don't even have the ability to, oh, I would do this with my sump here. That could be your next system. Call me, then we can do it custom. You can tell me
Right.
what all you want.
Right. That's the way to do it. You need to look in any hobby, you know, in kiteboarding and whatever, your first gear you get, you know, in racing and shooting and in anything, the first gear you get, you got no idea if that's the gear you want. 3D printing, anything. You have no experience to know.
There's
if
no
anything is
way,
good
there's
or
no
not.
way that you walk into a hobby and then if you could zip forward 10 years and say, hey, what'd you think about that stuff you bought? Every single goddamn time, it's garbage.
Yeah, my first kite's gone. My second kite's gone, right? As you get better, you know what you like and what works for you. And so, yeah, I think there's this rush in our hobby, in all hobbies, to be at the end of it before you know, to skip over all the learning part. But
here's another thing. If you're not even sure like what alkalinity level you should have or what sort of par numbers you should be getting over your lights, and then all of a sudden you're supposed to know how to do a whole rigid PVC structure for your plumbing, it's a big ask.
It's a big ask. So the upshot of all that is the important takeaway is be kinder to people who have done crazy plumbing, I think, because either they don't know what's going on or they do know what's going on and it's fine. I mean, we sat up all night with drinks and cigarettes and wine and people playing the lute and grapes. Talking
there was a
about
satyr.
This. We were talking, that's right, with hooves and shit. It was awesome. A snake eating its own tail.
Yes. Jorgmungand.
Talking about exactly this. And then the next day, you made a crazy ass plumbing on my calcium reactor.
Because I gave up.
Which is still working today. Oh, by the way.
No shit.
I found out, remember I was having problems with the calcium reactor not spinning back up if there was a power outage?
Yeah.
The recirculation pump. I found out what that was. The piece that goes on the top of the pump well, the impeller well, that holds the impeller shaft in place. It's like it's got a spindle that goes to the sides. Two or three of the spindles were broken.
Oh.
So it couldn't stay.
So it'd make the impeller wobble a little bit.
Yes. So when it goes to spin up, the impeller hit the side of the well.
It usually locks up.
So
if it doesn't get to stay stable, it locks up.
So I happened to have another backup pump. I was like, shit, I don't have time. This was like at 1 a.m, literally, and it was raining. And I was like, I don't want to do this now, but I need to. And I was like, I've got to unplumb. And I went, it's the same pump. Oh, and I just pulled the part off and switched it and boop, and we're all good again.
You know, there's something to be said for some sort of forethought. Now, I get you and I are sort of lucky because we're in the industry, but like someone like Steve Berlin with Siche, like you can get, and Jason Wilson, you can get extra parts. I don't know what that's called, like a volute cap or something like that. You could get extra parts and have them sitting around because if it breaks, it causes problems.
Well, anyone can do that. How I deal with that is I just buy a spare pump.
Yeah, but that's
right?
what I'm saying. It's a little crazy. But I guess I'm saying is a little unfair because if you're Joe Blow hobbyist, you don't know Steve or Jason, that might be tricky.
Oh, but even when I didn't know Steve or Jason, you know, the fluvels that I use, the SP6s, I bought extras. And if something goes bad and I can pull a piece off of one instead of the whole thing, I'm winning. It's faster.
Yeah, but you're richer than Elon Musk.
Am I? I don't think that's true.
I'm just saying words.
The house you saw me filming in was not ours in Mexico. That was not our house. But that's, you know, calcium reactor pump is a $80 pump, right? The recirc pump. How much are those? I don't even know what that is. Is it a Syncra? Oh, you don't know what things cost anyway. So shut up.
No, sort of. I know what they cost wholesale. I think what you have in there, dude, I'm going to take a gamble. I think it's a Siche Syncra 3.5.
I think that's right.
And I don't know why I know that. I just feel like that's what it
That's
is.
what it is, because that's about the right size for.
And so retail, that's got to be like $50.
Yeah. So, things like that, like calcium reactor, you might not think, you may be able to be fine if it goes down, you'll be okay for a couple days, right? That is definitely a way to run your tank. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to fix it right away. And I'm lucky enough that I'm invested enough. Look at this fucking stupid shit behind me.
And okay, so I'm not giving in with my argument of plumbing things properly if you know how to do it.
Sure.
But I am saying that is sort of a case in point that how I rigged that Ceche on your calcium reactor. And this was 2-3 years ago.
4 now. Yeah, there was no good way to redo it without doing a ton of work or making a loop, right? We would have had to make something crazy, which we still might do.
And didn't we just use silicone tubing to just stretch over and tie them together?
Yep.
So I mean, that's a little embarrassing. I would not do that at a client that's paying me just because of the repercussion. It's about liability for me. But that is sort of embarrassing because we rigged something that is now 4 years old. And that's
I'll get a picture of that. I have added some zip ties around the barbs.
Yeah, just in case.
To keep it in place. I'll try to get a picture of it and we'll put that up. So yeah, so as with, I think most of our conversations come down to, if you can do it, a more, I don't want to say better, a
robust,
a more understood, a more proven way, a way that, not a better way, proper, maybe.
Man, but Richard, this is totally why Red Sea, Waterbox, K, Neptunian Cube, all this is so popular because for me, I get jollies for being a professional installer of being able to do Schedule 80 supported pipe on the wall, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I get jollies out of that. But man, I absolutely understand someone that's like, look, I'm an aquarist. That's what I want to be. I never signed up to understand how to do plumbing. It not only is that not in my wheelhouse, I don't want it in my wheelhouse. I get that.
Yes. Fine.
Champion Lighting and Supply
at championlighting.com.
Guys, champion and gals and non-binary pals. Champion Lighting and Supply is awesome. And you got to check them out. They're on the East Coast. They do have several lines of product like Captivate that are specific only to them, that only they are distributors of. Look them up and they have cool stuff. Look at that. There's Captivate, little foods and stuff. Richard, I have breaking news. So Todd from Champion Lighting told me specifically, please tell the yearning public that CTAC, that adhesive that they came up with, CTAC is ready, available early February.
Early February for the CTAC.
Which is funny because that's still like not super specific, but there it is. It is cool stuff I put together. I did the aquascaping on a 500-gallon aquarium using it. And we'll talk about it more when it does hit the shelves, but they've been sort of, getting it out there. It's a cool adhesive, but we do thank you, Champion Lighting and Supply.
Fine. What happens in discussions about reefing a lot is people say, show me the proof, show me the scientific proof. And that's a problematic word, because if you want to be technical, if you want to be right about it, proving things only happens in math, right? You only get actual proofs in math. Prove it to me is a colloquialism. What you really mean is, show me the evidence that makes you think that, so I can decide if I think that that evidence is compelling enough to make me change my mind, right? Because think about it. When people say, prove it to me, and then somebody trots out a paper, a peer-reviewed paper, who the fuck understands that paper? That paper's not for us. Those papers are for people who are expert in that field. So those papers are, you know, the first thing that happens with a paper, if you give me a paper, which happens all the time, somebody goes, hey, is this okay for spawning? Or is this okay for, you know, whatever? It's like, oh God, now I've got to read the paper. I've got to look at the abstract. I've got to say, is this paper even talking about what we think it's talking about? What are the significant figures? And, you know, if it said it saw a reduction in calcification, now I've got to do a whole lot of math to convert that amount of reduction in calcification to a percentage, because papers never do that. So we can go, yeah, it was a 4% reduction in calcification. Who cares? But that's a whole lot of work. So the paper is not proof. The paper is evidence. It might be good evidence. It might be not compelling evidence. So I like, and also people get it in their heads that this is like a super beef. This is like a giant beef burrito. They get it in their heads that that there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, that we understand all of this, and we don't. So don't ask for proof, ask for evidence, because evidence can be anything. Evidence can be Ben Johnson's, my evidence for doing the plumbing in a more methodical way. That's what the word I was looking for before. Why should I do my plumbing in a more methodical way? Because Ben Johnson, who has done 1 million plumbing jobs and has been in the industry since before there were crosses to crucify people on, says so. And that's not necessarily a bad reason to do anything. You know, what light should I use? Well, Sanjay likes this one and Jim likes this one. Either one of those is going to be fine. And, you know, I've got a chemistry question. Why do you believe it? Because Craig told it to me. You know, listen, I had a conversation with Maupin about evaporation the other day, because my tank salinity, my system salinity was going up, and I couldn't figure out why.
Crappy conductivity probe.
Right? No, it was not. It was actually going up. Not only did I bust out the floating hydrometer, but I also got another one that's supposed to be more accurate. They're the same. It's fine. To check the salinity, because it would go up over 3 or 4 days. And I was like, what the fuck's going on? So I got into this whole mind story about evaporation, and I was confusing the hell out of myself. Is it evaporate less or more when it's hotter or colder, right? There's that rule of thumb that you get more evaporation when it's hotter. Not really true, as with most mind stories. But so Chris and I talk about this for 40 minutes because I'm losing my mind. My salinity keeps going up, and it's bad if I don't catch it and stay on top of it. So it turns out that I've got a lot of surface area under the house of water, right? And it's cold outside. Under the house is essentially outside. Anyway, the difference really is that if your water is hot in a cold place and you keep adding more heat into the water, you're going to get a lot of evaporation. There's a zone just on top of the water where the water has evaporated, so it's 100% saturation, but it's not water. And that is, if the air temperature is cold, you're stealing energy from that system constantly. So here's the analogy. You got a coffee cup or a teacup that's got hot piping fluid in it, right? Coffee. You go outside on a snowy day, that's going to steam, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's evaporating the crap out of that coffee. That's what the steam is. If you put a heater in that coffee cup and kept it at 100 degrees, it would evaporate very quickly.
Okay.
So the upshot of it is that I had a tube from a peristaltic pump that was supposed to be pulling water out of my system, not in the water, so it was just pumping air.
Oh.
So I'm putting 30 liters of new salt water into my tank every day, into my system. It's about 8 gallons. Without taking any water out of the system, it was evaporating about 30 liters of fresh water out of my tank every couple of days. So the salinity kept going up. It turned out all it was I wasn't actually pulling water out. So the auto top off of fresh water never was triggered.
I mean, but question. So the technical question, how did that happen?
I knocked the line out when I was doing something. I've got a better, that's all going to get fixed in the revamp that's coming up. I've known that this is a danger. And I've got an idea of how to do it all. So, you know, if Maupin says this is how evaporation works, that's good enough evidence for me. He's proven himself time and time again. He's a fucking paleoclimatologist. PhD. Evaporation is what feeds hurricanes, and that's what he studies. Yes. So, that's kind of what he studies.
I mean, to be contrary to that, it'd be like arguing with Craig Bingman about Kalkwasser.
It's the same exact thing. I am not going to get into the minutia of the chemistry of Kalkwasser with Craig. I'm just going to go, cool. Craig said, so that's good evidence. That's, anecdotal evidence is fine. Wow, man. This person I know, Matt Wandell's got a beautiful tank, and I love his tank, and he says he's doing this. Okay, let's try that. Right? I don't necessarily need any kind of knockdown, drag out evidence that's going to settle this question forever, because none of it is, right? So like the word better, I would like us to get rid of the word proof, because I think it sets a standard that is unattainable and just makes people fight with each other. A paper is not the knock all drag out of everything. Papers are wrong all the time.
But is it almost too like people, I mean, that sounds like elitism, but I do respect someone who has attained a PhD. Let me put it that way. It doesn't mean that they're the patron saint of whatever. I get it. But I mean, how are you equipped? That's a big question, because some people get all touchy, like elitism, but how are you equipped to argue over someone who has a PhD in a subject? I mean, they could be an asshole, but how are you equipped to argue with them?
And they have shown over and over again that they know what they're talking about. You can argue with Randy Holmes Farley all you want about husbandry practices.
Okay.
But when he tells you how alkalinity is affected from calcium hydroxide,
what do you,
I'm going to go with Randy. Unless you have really compelling evidence to present that Randy's wrong. Not a big deal, right? I mean, it makes sense. You're not going to, you're not going to talk to your sportsing, a coach that's winning all the time. You're going to listen to that coach when they give you advice. A coach that's not winning all the time, this is not, and they say, what you really should do is this. And you kind of go, that doesn't seem really compelling, because you do that all the time and it never works.
Yeah, like who's the Patriots dude? Like Bill Belichick? Like, I just barely know that. I'm just throwing it out there. But like, yeah, so that's to do with the Patriots, and they've won the sportsing event many times. And then he's like, this is how we win, and I'm like, no, it's not. Like, how stupid does that sound?
Right. So that's why we say, ask for a picture of a person's tank that you're taking advice from. So you get an idea of if that's what you want. But, the important thing, I think, is that, well, the real question is, how do you make decisions, right? With all this evidence out there, everyone who says you can get rid of cyano by lowering your nutrients, they have some kind of evidence to support that idea. I don't find it compelling.
Richard, you changed me again.
Yeah? How so?
Man, for 20 years, I've been using red slime remover. and I sort of have it down to a science because I've used it more than the next individual. You know, how to put it in and then how to remove it and how to proceed further after that. For me, I've done it so many times, it's like a no-brainer. But I had a client that had a cyano problem, and in our Discord, you were recommending to some people to do that, and I watched in real time as these people dealt with it, the 3-day blackout. So I told my client to just do a 3-day blackout. Boom, gone.
If it comes back in a month, do it again.
No chemicals, no extra polyfilter, extra carbon, extra giant water change, me being at the client 2 times longer than I normally am. 3-day blackout.
No putting antibiotics in that are doing something to the system.
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you. That makes me feel good. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't question people. I'm just saying that you should be aware of how compelling your evidence is. You know, you're going to talk to me about chloroquine, I'm going to have to defer to some other people. And you know, the minutia about, are we arguing, you know, are you having a high level discussion or a low level discussion? You know, prove to me that this pump is, I should use this pump over this pump. There is no proof of that. There is just evidence of people's testimonials, their anecdote about how those pumps work for them. Something might stand out. You go, oh, you know, oh, I need Wi-Fi. That pump doesn't have Wi-Fi, so I'm not going to use it. But it's not better or worse or proven. It's just how compelling is the evidence. Do I need, is that, am I wrong? Does that make sense? Because I see people getting head to head about proof, and then they trot out papers, and none of them, and most of the time they're just reading the fucking abstracts of the paper, not reading the whole paper anyway, and it just makes me crazy. And then they demand scientific evidence, and it's like, that's not what we're all about.
No, and I know, and it's like I said a couple episodes ago, like I love the aquarium industry, and it's chock full of science, but it is not a scientific endeavor. And I mean, the whole impetus for you and me having the show is sort of like debunking and defrauding, and, you know, sort of cutting to the chase and the plain shit. We're not bottling a product to sell you. And even if we do, it'd be real tongue in cheek. It's just, you know, you don't, my position, like there's so many bottles of magical bullshit. You don't need 99% of them. It's just, you know, consistent maintenance and doing what you do. And, you know, I'm a product, you know, I'd spent 10 years in 5 different stores from Dallas to Houston. And, you know, I got sick of it. And I left to work at the zoo for sort of like an interim, like mind change. And then after that, I started this maintenance company. I just got sick of, like, okay, I'm not going to name a company, but the whatever rep would come in and say, hey, you're not selling bottle X. But here's the trick, and I don't mean to sound arrogant on this, but usually the places that I worked with, I became the #1 salesman, just because I was always charismatic with the clients, and they'd ask me a question, I'd give them more than they asked, and this and that. I became popular every place that I worked. I became popular with the clientele coming in. I was not popular with the sales reps for the manufacturing companies. Hey, why aren't you selling the bottle of blah, blah, blah? Because it's bullshit. Just, I tell the client, buy more salt, do more regular water changes, or what, you know, be consistent, blah, blah, blah. In a store mindset, and hey, local fish stores, I'm sorry, man, because I know that there's good ones out there. I'm not trying to crap on everybody, but it's like, you know, when I'm behind the counter and you come in, hey, I got a problem. You know what? I got that solution, and it's on that counter over there. Whatever problem you tell me you have, you got ick, you got algae, you got cloudy water, do you have blah, this or that? I got a bottle to fix any problem you have, a magic elixir on my counter, you know? So it's like, it's just sort of frustrating. That's what Richard and I are doing with this show, is you don't need a magic bottle of whatever. We're trying to teach y'all, like, it's a little more simple than everyone makes it out to be.
Right. And the reason you and I are dicks, I'm sorry, the reason you and I are jackasses about some of this stuff is because we have a shit ton of experience. Both of us love to be wrong. I'm thrilled when I'm wrong.
I learn when
But-
I'm wrong.
But you know, if you're gonna challenge me on skimming, or you're gonna challenge me on salinity, or you're gonna challenge me on some basic stuff, you better have some compelling evidence for me. It's back to Sagan's, baloney detection kit. And the more experienced somebody is in a given realm, the more compelling you just need to get your evidence in line. It's like, we're fucking so tired about the nanobubble thing, but the bubble thing, it's like there was no compelling evidence for it for most of the claims they were making.
A lot of people listening or watching this aren't going to know what we're even talking about right there.
There was the thing to have nanobubbles. I don't look.
Sort of hate to dig it up.
I don't even want to dig it up. We talked about it before. We got a link to it somewhere before. It's not worth it. It was an idea that had some basic utility from the get-go, meaning it acts as a flocculant. Maybe it impacts your pH.
But then extra claims were thrown on it.
But
that
then
cannot
a ton of stuff. And it didn't make sense. And the papers they were using to justify it didn't say what they said the papers said. So there was a whole lot about that. And that's fine. I don't want to fight about that. I want to have a discussion about that. And the only reason I get involved in those kind of discussions is to see if I'm wrong so I can be better. So I
go back to what I was talking about last episode too, about ego. Like I mean, this isn't a philosophical show. I just think it's good for people to understand their ego and how they wrap them up into ideas they have. So when those ideas get challenged, you feel like your ego is being attacked, and you shouldn't do that with ideas. So because you're going to tilt at every single windmill.
Yeah. And I want just to give examples of trying to make the evidence more compelling, because I think maybe that's what I'm getting at with all this is, if I'm going to challenge something, I'm going to spend a lot of time making sure my challenge makes some kind of sense before I bring it to the world. And especially before I give people advice, really hardcore advice. The phosphate talk I did the first time, I spent 2 years paying attention to phosphates in my tank and what's going on, and doing a shit ton of testing before I presented that and wrote it up. The new talk about algae and managing algae with nutrients and why that doesn't make sense. I spent 3 or 4 years exploring that idea before I finally felt like I had a case.
I mean, what would be embarrassing is to stand up in front of a bunch of people or an online audience and say, blah, 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 blah. And then someone brings forth a compelling argument and just eviscerates you. That's embarrassing.
Shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, but it usually is.
Well, that's because if ego's involved.
But you need time to work that out in your head, because initially everyone's reaction is just, oh, you challenging me, blah, 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 is defense.
Right. And that's why I suppose when I say, what's your support for that, people get pissed off.
But that's where I laugh when I'm listening to the conversation, because I'm like, I don't mean to genderize that, but like, bro, you came to this conversation with potholes in your argument. Like, you should not have come on to a online audience with that many holes in your assertions, which, okay, it's not like I'm some big brain, but it just makes me think that some people come up with some idea and they never brought it up to someone who really challenged them. And then they start drumming it up, and then someone actually challenges them and they get all pissed. And it's just like, man, you should have done this in private, because it's enough getting embarrassed in private. It's far worse getting embarrassed on social media. Yeah, you know what? But I think people should just get over that. If you've got a better idea than mine, even if I'm out championing it from the rooftops, give me the compelling evidence, because if I'm wrong, I want to know about it so I can stop being wrong. This whole endeavor of all of these tanks and this show and anything I've ever done in reef keeping is to make me better. It's not to, clearly I'm not writing books and trying to make other people
set up tanks. That's not a line of income I've cared about, because I'm totally selfish. The reason personally I'm still on the forums talking and not talking as much, but paying attention and sometimes talking, is because I want to be better. I want to be up to snuff. I want to challenge my ideas all the time.
Yeah.
Because I'm not always right. And I know that. There are very few areas where I feel expert, and I'm happy to be expert on that. And even those areas, I'm happy to be wrong, right? It's like Dawkins says, if you go to a scientific conference, everyone who gets up kind of goes, all right, I'm going to talk about this. And I'm sure, there's 10 people in the room that know more about it than me. So hopefully I've got it right. And off we go, right? And afterwards, people, like you twice tonight, you said, I've changed your mind. I've altered your thinking. That's incredibly amazing that you have listened to what I've said and agreed with it, and it's altered the way you look at something. That's awesome. And that happens to me all the fucking time. It happens to me on the Discord. I don't know shit about battery backups. So Jim knows shit about battery backups. I watched a bunch of the stuff he did, about battery backups. And then I reached out to him and I went, tell me what to do. Now, it may be that through doing it, I'm going to learn a different way to do it that makes more sense to me. But to get started, I want the fucking CADE system of battery backups. I just want it to work.
I started smiling because I sort of had this idea about how people's brains work and thinking about forums. Because the funny thing is I don't know if this is like a show, like to make a show about this, but like, how would one identify a supposed expert on a subject? Because what forums seem like to me is you don't know anything about aquariums. You go on there like my axolotl's dying. What do I do? And Jim Bob 402 says, oh, well, you got to put baking soda in the water. Like, is that what you do on forums, is just start taking anyone's fucking opinion on anything? And then you get mad because you're confused. You have not identified an expert. So why the fuck are you so mad about random motherfuckers making assumptions? And you're like, why you guys have 20 different opinions? It's a bunch of numbskulls. Find the expert. Find the subject matter expert.
I wrote an article about experts. So that's out there if people want to read it. And we can do a show about experts because it is an interesting thing. Because you have to trust them, but you also have to squint at them.
I think you always squint.
But that's
always.
What comes back to the compelling evidence. If you're talking to somebody who is expert or considered expert, you really want to have your ducks in a row a little bit before you challenge them.
And if you don't know the first thing about someone, you should squint about everything. If you're on a forum and you said, why can't I keep axolotls alive? And 15 different people answer, I mean, that's just part of the problem. You don't know who these people are or why they would know anything about an axle. Otherwise, they're just spitting word salad, and then you get mad at them. I'm not saying maybe you should be mad at yourself for taking random fucking opinions.
Yes, you should. Yes, and if you on the Reef forums, sure, same with the axolotl forums. Those 20 people all tell you something different. It can be crazy making. It's
like
hard.
I just run into the mall, like, how do I tie my shoe? And everyone, tells me how to tie my shoe. And then I get mad at them because some of them told me how to tie it wrong. Like,
right. So it's the same thing with kites, right? Different kites do different things. And people are always on the beach going, what kite should I get? What's the best kite? And it's like, but it's the same thing. It's like, what do you want to do with it?
What are you trying to do? What's your fitness level? What's blah, blah, blah.
If you want to kite here, I can tell you what works for me. Are you talking to me because I'm out when there's barely any wind and other people aren't able to do that? Okay, I'll tell you what I do. I don't know if that's going to work for you, but I can tell you what I do. But everyone wants to go, what kite should I buy? I don't fucking know what what are you going to do? Everything is more complicated than a simple answer.
Yeah. So many things.
So how do you make those decisions? Find somebody you trust look at their tank, see if it's a tank you want, and then kind of listen to what they have to say. And then run those ideas by some other people and see if people think that makes some kind of sense.
Everyone wants an easy answer, and in the low-hanging fruit easy answer is quite often to an expert going to be the wrong answer.
Right. And so my reticence to give recipes, which I think are easy answers, is because I think recipes, first of all, no one follows them. And second of all, I think it leads to a weakness in reef keeping, and the animals deserve more than that. So, the recipe I have is set up a fucking small 12 to 30 gallon tank and play with that with easy stuff for 6 months.
Yeah,
that's my recipe. And then
on
everyone
that.
goes, I don't want to follow that recipe. I want an instant tank. It's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Fine.
Fine.
Hey, beefers, can we get serious for just a minute? We think you're really pretty, beefers. Guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Thank you for all the support, beefers. We wouldn't do this if it wasn't for you. And thank you. Your support makes this possible, right? So we've got the Discord now, and we're kind of saying, hey, if you're gonna buy us a coffee or support us monetarily like that, better to just become a member, and then you get access to some areas of the Discord that people who aren't members don't get access to. And that's very nice. It's a self-selecting group. So you kind of know anybody in that area wants to be there, and they're not going to blow smoke up your ass, because if it's somebody who blows smoke up your ass, we're probably going to boot them, because we don't want that kind of community. We want a community where you could say whatever you want, that people aren't jackasses to each other, and that when flare-ups happen, everyone's nice again to each other, and we work through it, right?
We're not asking everyone to think alike. Just don't be an asshole.
Yeah. Have the discussion rather than the fight is what we want. And the Discord's crazy. It's like bizarre. Trying to make it fit into one kind of
It's just
frame.
an ongoing bar conversation.
Yeah, I think Snowman actually changed the name of it to Pub Reef Beef, because that's what it's like. And each of the channels is like going to a different table or a different spot at the bar. So, but I'm getting away from what I'm talking about. Beefers, we love you so much. Thank you for all the support. If you become a member, you support us and you help us to continue doing the show, which, as much as we want to do it out of the goodness of our heart, we have things to do. So having some kind of income from this, or at least not losing money, is very helpful when we buy new equipment. And if you want to buy merch, that's great. And if you become a member, you get a discount on merch and all that kind of stuff. Ben, I've been talking for too long and kissing too much ass right now. So fix it for me and get us out of this.
Beefers, we love you. Thanks for the support. Join Discord. Come talk with us. Let's be friends.
Fine.
Fine.
You know what time it is?
Oh, it's book time. It's book time. Do you have some books?
I do. What is your book, Ben?
You want to do mine first?
I do.
So my book was, I don't want to say controversial, but I remember when it came out, I believe it was the extremely early 2000s, and it hit some bookstores, some aquarium stores that I worked in, and everyone was like, that book's crazy because it's too complicated and who the fuck's going to use it? And I own it, but I don't know that I've ever used it. It is very complicated. It is Aquatic Systems Engineering, Devices and How They Function by P.R. Escobar. Now, he was the CEO. He was the CEO, president of Aquatronics. They used to make pumps, and they made sterilizers. They made all sorts of stuff. But I bought it because, I mean, back in the day when books were where it's at, like, I just bought every book that ever came out. But I mean, I'm talking about, like, the book is filled with like linear equations about ultraviolet, UV pass by. What is this? Installation hydraulics loss, head pressure loss, which is not complicated, but skimmers. If you're just a random aquarist, this is just going to be a paperweight for you. But like in our Discord, there was someone that was asking about when you put two pumps in series. Like, what do they do? Does the intake need to be bigger? Like, what do they do to each other? This and that. This has it in there. What I'm just trying to open like
Or
random.
I'm just gonna get on the Discord and ask Alex because he's doing crazy big, crazy stuff.
Like
Awesome
there's
stuff.
plumbing, in here. It's not chemistry. It's like system designs, like plumbing and friction loss budget, elbow, whoop, and throw the book on the ground. Is this usable to anybody? I don't know. There's going to be some people out there that can get something out of this. When you do flip through it, it is incredibly complicated, but it is still a book.
It's a great book.
To give it a little bit of, help here. Let me just read this. On the back it says, all you need to know about turnover times, filters, sterilizers, reactors, venturi, skimmers, pumps, hydraulics, heat, ozone, oxygen, carbon dioxide, calcium, tank bioload capacity, and light requirements presented wherever possible in an easy to use graphical format, backed up by many examples and problems with worked out answers. That's what the book is.
Right on. My book is completely opposite. I didn't have a book when we were in Mexico, but I have a book now. This book, look, I have used this book clearly, right? This is the first aquarium book I ever bought.
No way.
When I have a new copy of it too, but this was 1977 or 78. I think I stole it from the library. I did, because you can see here.
Oh my God, you ripped it out. No evidence.
But this is when I was 10 or 12, and it's called Confessions of a Fish Doctor by Scott Bodie.
No way.
And it's not just like, here's how you do it. It's stories. He did your job essentially in the 70s.
Wow.
Where he would go around in New York and help people who had fish problems.
Wow.
So he talks about those stories in this book as a way to illuminate things you need to know to keep aquariums, right? So he talks about saltwater, he talks about goldfish, schooling fish, and it was great. And in the back, he's got these charts and these appendices where it tells you, the fish, its habitat, its size, its hardiness, its temperament, what it needs, its temperature, optimal environment, its size, how to raise it.
Wow, he was a bit before his time, wasn't he?
And there's a lot of them. It's the commonly kept fish chart, drugs and medication flow charts, and you can see. Drugs. Look, everything is fucking highlighted. I went through everything.
You probably highlighted dumb stuff.
When you create a community aquarium, your major concern must be the selection of comparable tank mates.
Yeah.
No, this is stuff. I was looking through it a little bit today and laughing over,
what you highlighted.
This formed my brains. And my approach, and I got all kinds of lists in there. I don't know if you can see those, lists of things I was thinking about, or
dude,
purpose.
You need to respect that book. It looks like it's about to disintegrate like a mummy.
Like I said, I have a new copy. It says here, purpose: to see what will happen with the breeding pair and the Oscar. So I was putting a pair of, it looks like convex cichlids in with an Oscar to see what would happen. And how much the convicts would protect the fry.
So he talks about freshwater and saltwater?
Yeah, and the saltwater stuff's hilarious because it's 1 million years old, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't recommend that for anything. And it's a very short chapter. It's like 15 pages for saltwater.
That book looks like it's in the same condition as an ancient mummy.
Yeah, don't touch it or it'll fall apart.
You shatter it.
Here's prices of plants that I was going to buy.
Oh my God.
I would take this to the store and write shit down. But the funniest thing that I found out today, it was I had this in middle school. Brandy Kenyon wrote this, and I used to love her, so that was exciting. Here it says Steinhardt, Pat Morales. So somebody had told me about something to get to Pat Morales. but in the back, it also has Frank Glennon's phone number and Fresh and Frank Miller's phone number for Salt. And there were people at Steinhardt when I was like 14.
Could you
And
call them?
I ended up working with Frank Glennon.
No way.
Yeah. So I didn't even know.
That is insane.
And that's how long it's been since I've actually looked at this book. So
Holy
this used to
crap.
come with me everywhere. And then when I got back into the hobby after a break and the Reef Aquarium existed, the sprung book, I did the same thing to it. I think I pulled it out and showed that. But this book is now that I think about it, if you know all the outlines I have for books that I was going to write about the hobby, it's kind of based on this. It's stories. It's not just information.
That's good because it's fun to read.
Yeah, and now I'm friends with Scott Bodie on Facebook.
Are you serious?
I think he's still alive.
When'd you do that?
About 4 years ago, and I wrote to him and I said, "Hey, I just want you to know your book was everything to me to get me on this path. And you know, now I've worked at a public aquarium and I've done this and I've done this, and you know, thank you. It wouldn't have been the same without your book."
Dude, that wouldn't be weird to like reach out to him, would it?
I did reach out to him
And bring him on Reef Beef. He's like 98 years old.
Maybe.
I
Anyway,
can see if I can crush his skull like a mummy.
I think it's a fun read, even today. I'm sure Jason will try to get a copy if he doesn't have
Jason
one
Langer.
And that's our books. That's our show, baby. Thank you all for listening. My name is Richard.
And my name is Benjamin.
And this show is powered by PolypLab and brought to you by saltwateraquarium.com and Champion Life.
This episode hosted by Richard Ross and Ben Johnson, produced by Richard Ross and Snowman, edited and directed by Snowman. Thanks to our Prime and Gold level beefers, James B., Rich P., Ryan H., Corey, Jason C., Robert S., Scott O., Pedro, Russell, and Scott C.
Yeah, maybe Snowman will just cut all the rest of it out and leave that. Thank you, sir. I'm going to take a moment to talk about something no one cares about. We've recorded this episode already while I was in Mexico, and it didn't work. The recording didn't take. It was terrible. So we're redoing it again. Not like Ben and I ever remember anything that we've talked about with a lot of precision, but yeah, I think that's kind of fun. And then tomorrow we'll do a new one. And I'm not all the way on the camera. This is Reef Beef. Oh, no. What do I have to say?
No, I got to remember two things. I need to write them down because one, there's a beef for Mina, very nice person.
Yeah.
And I told him I was going to give him and his little tiny daughter. He said his 2-year-old daughter watches Reef Beef. And so I was going to give them a shout out. And we also need to do the thing with Purple Burglar. I can't even do it. Purple Burglar Alarm from Ron. Purple Burglar Alarm, Scottish accent.
I missed that.
What?
I was in Mexico.
I thought that was before you went to Mexico. He recorded himself saying it.
Purple Burglar Alarm?
Yeah, the Scottish people have a problem saying
Purple Burglar Alarm.
Yeah, it just sounded like a train wreck with mouths.
Oh, I missed that. So I'm thrilled not to.
So I need to pull that off the Discord and send it to Snowman when we record tomorrow, because I'm going to mention both things. There is Snowman's ask if we're recording.
Yay, I've made Ben more of an asshole.
Yeah, it's, first of all, I don't need to be more than an asshole than I already am. And B, I don't know what an example of B is.
Good. Oh,
dude.
my probe droid fell over.
For the listener, Richard just knocked over his Hoth.
It's an Imperial probe droid. Get it right.
Imperial probe droid.
He's all good.
It seems like an arm fell off. Is this true?
No, the arms all move, so.
Okay.
They're articulated.